There's something about the routine of a barber shop that makes you lower your guard. The low hum of clippers, the smell of aftershave and talcum powder, the idle small talk that never goes too deep. A man can sit in that chair, let another man take a blade to his throat, and somehow feel at ease. I had been going to Ray's shop for 5 years. Long enough for him to know exactly how I like my hair, tight on the sides, a little longer on top, nothing fancy. Long enough for me to know he liked to talk, but never about himself. Ray was a big guy, broad shoulders, the kind of build that came from real work, not just lifting weights for vanity. He had a square jaw, salt and pepper hair, slicked back with too much gel, and a smirk that always made it seem like he was about to say something inappropriate. A ladies' man, or at least he thought so. I never minded him much. Never thought about him much either. Until that afternoon. It was a Wednesday just after lunch. The shop was empty when I walked in, aside from Ray wiping down his clippers with that casual confidence of a man who owned the place. He looked up, grinned, and jerked his chin toward the chair. Right on time, he said, like he'd been expecting me. I sat down, letting the familiarity of the shop settle over me. The leather of the chair creaked under my weight, and I let out a breath, relaxing. Same as usual? I nodded. He got to work, the buzz of the clippers filling the silence. Everything felt normal. And then he said it. I know how to please your wife. At first, I didn't react. The words hung in the air, almost blending into the background noise of the shop. My brain didn't register them right away. It was just a sentence, a joke maybe. A stupid one. But then my mind caught up. The clippers paused for a split second. So fast I might have missed it if I wasn't already stiffening in the chair. I glanced up at the mirror, at his reflection, and he was smirking, not laughing, not looking sheepish like a man who just said something dumb and regretted it. Just smirking, like he knew something I didn't. I forced a short, hollow laugh. What? He shook his head, grinning wider, and went back to the cut like nothing happened. Like the words weren't hanging between us, poisoning the air. My stomach twisted. It was nothing. It had to be nothing. But my brain had already started working against me, dragging up things I had ignored before. Laura, my wife, had started taking a weird interest in my haircuts over the past few months. She'd compliment them more than usual, touch the back of my head after I got home, run her fingers through my hair longer than necessary. You always look so sharp after you see Ray, she'd say, her voice just a little too sweet. It was a harmless compliment, right? But now, sitting in that chair with Ray's words still echoing in my head, I started replaying all those little moments. Laura had also been going out more, running errands, spending more time in the bathroom, checking herself in the mirror. I'd wake up at night, roll over, and see her phone screen glowing faintly under the covers as she texted someone. I had ignored it. I had brushed it off. Until now, I felt a slow burn in my chest, something ugly and sharp. I want to turn around and demand an answer, grab Ray by the collar, and make him tell me what the hell he meant. But I didn't. Not yet. I let him finish the cut, let him dust the loose hairs off my neck like nothing was wrong. When I got up, he clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. See you next time, he said. His grin lingered a second too long. I paid, left the shop, and got into my car. But I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. If he was just joking, it was the worst joke he could have made. And if he wasn't, there was only one way to find out. I turned the key and headed home. The drive home felt different. I wasn't sure if it was the weight of what I was thinking, or if I was finally noticing things I'd been blind to for too long. The streets looked the same, but my world had tilted. Everything felt sharper, more focused. The trees lining the road, the cracks in the pavement, the way the afternoon sun hit my windshield at just the wrong angle. My hands were tight around the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Ray's words kept repeating in my head. I know how to please your wife. The tone, the look, the smug grin, it hadn't been some casual joke. He meant it. He wanted me to know, and that's what burned the most. If he was sleeping with Laura, he wasn't hiding it. He was taunting me with it. He was so confident, so damn sure that I wouldn't put the pieces together, or worse, that I'd put them together and do nothing. But I wasn't the kind of man who did nothing. The tires screeched a little as I pulled into the driveway. Our house was small, but comfortable. White siding, a porch swing that Laura had insisted on, but never actually sat in, a neatly trimmed lawn that I took care of every weekend. It looked the same as it always did. Peaceful. Ordinary. I stepped out of the car, shutting the door harder than I needed to, and walked up to the front door. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and vanilla. Laura was in the kitchen, standing at the sink, washing dishes. Her long dark hair was tied up in a messy bun, a loose sweater hanging off her shoulder. She looked up when I walked in and smiled. "You're home early." I stared at her. Everything about her was the same. The same soft voice, the same warm eyes. But I saw her differently now. There was something underneath the familiarity, something I had never let myself look for before. I dropped my keys onto the counter with a clatter. Went to raise. She turned off the sink and dried her hands on a towel. "Oh yeah? Looks good." She walked over and reached up, running her fingers through my freshly cut hair, just like she always did. My stomach twisted. I grabbed her wrist, stopping her. She blinked, confused. "What's wrong?" I searched her face. How many times had she come home, looking like this, acting like this after being with someone else? How many times had she kissed me good night after kissing another man? I let go of her wrist. "Ray said something weird today," I said, my voice rough. Her smile faltered just a little. "Weird how?" I watched her closely. He said, "I know how to please your wife." For a split second, less than that, really, her expression changed. It was like a flicker of static on a TV screen, there and gone. A tightening around her mouth, a flick of her eyes to the side. Then she let out a breathy laugh. "Ugh, that sounds like Ray. He's always saying stuff like that, isn't he?" I didn't laugh. She shifted on her feet. "Babe, come on." He was joking. You know how barbers are, always messing around, making dumb comments. I mean, remember when he told you he could give you the George Clooney, even though you look nothing like him? I wasn't smiling. This was different. She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "All right, so he made a stupid joke. Why are you acting like it's a big deal?" I took a slow step closer, because it felt like more than a joke. She scoffed. "You're overthinking it." Overthinking. That word. It was the kind of thing people said when they wanted you to drop something. The kind of thing someone said when they were guilty. I could feel my temper rising. If it was just a joke, why do you look nervous? She blinked. "I don't look nervous." "You do." She let out a small, forced laugh and shook her head. "Oh my God, you're being ridiculous." "What? Do you think I'm having an affair with our barber?" She said it like it was the dumbest thing in the world, like the idea was so absurd she could barely take it seriously. I just stared at her. Her smile faded. "You can't be serious," she said. I didn't say anything. Her face twisted with frustration. "Wow. Just wow. One little comment from Ray, and suddenly you think I'm cheating." Still, I said nothing. She huffed and turned away, running a hand through her hair. "I can't believe this. I go out of my way to make sure you feel loved, and this is what I get? Accusations? Do you know how insulting this is?" The anger in her voice was convincing. A weaker man might have fallen for it. But I wasn't a weaker man. I was watching her carefully. The way she avoided eye contact, the way she kept touching her face, the way she suddenly needed to be on the defensive. She was lying. I had seen her lie before. Small lies, harmless ones. I didn't have time to do the dishes. I only bought one pair of shoes, I swear. I wasn't texting anyone, just checking the weather. But this wasn't harmless. And she was trying too hard. I exhaled slowly. "Where were you today?" Her eyes narrowed. "Seriously? That's what we're doing now? Interrogations? Where were you?" She crossed her arms. "I went shopping, like I told you I would. Want to check my receipts?" That was the kind of challenge she only threw out when she knew I couldn't take her up on it. I didn't need receipts. I needed the truth, and I was going to get it. I stood there, staring at my wife, feeling my own pulse in my ears. The room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in, closing the space between us. Laura had crossed her arms, her stance defensive, her face pulled into an expression that was meant to be offended, but her eyes gave her away. She was thinking, calculating. Every word, every breath she took had intention behind it. She wasn't just reacting, she was crafting a response. Choosing her next move like this was a game of chess. "Shopping," I repeated slowly. She rolled her eyes. "Yes, shopping." I didn't break eye contact. Where? She scoffed. Oh my God. Does it matter? I didn't answer. Her fingers twitched against her arms. I went to the mall. Bought a few things. Walked around. Got coffee. Is that enough detail for you, detective? I ignored the jab. What did you buy? Are you serious? I said nothing. She sighed dramatically, turning toward the dining table where her purse sat. She grabbed it, unzipped it, and pulled out a few crumpled receipts, tossing them onto the counter between us. There. Proof. Happy. I picked them up and scanned them. One from clothing store, one from cafe, another from shoe store. The timestamps showed purchases made around noon, a steady gap between each one, like she'd actually spent the afternoon browsing. It should have been convincing, but something fell off. I held up the cafe receipt. What did you get? She frowned. What? At the cafe, I said. What did you order? Her lips parted slightly, just a flicker of hesitation. Then she huffed. A latte. I looked at the receipt again. 2 drinks. Looks like you got 2, I said, holding it up. Who was with you? She blinked. Then she scoffed, shaking her head like I was being ridiculous. Oh my God. Are you even hearing yourself? You think because I bought 2 drinks, I must be cheating on you? Wow. I stayed silent. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You're impossible. You know that? Maybe I bought one for a friend. Maybe I was thirsty. Maybe Boo, I cut in. What? Which friend? Her jaw tightened. It was a simple question. A harmless one, if she was telling the truth. But she wasn't. She hesitated. Megan. Megan. It was an easy answer. Her go-to. Megan was one of her closest friends, someone I barely interacted with, someone she could name without worrying about me checking. She had used Megan as a cover before. I exhaled slowly, setting the receipt down. Call her. Laura's whole body stiffened. What? She asked, her voice suddenly quieter. Call Megan. I repeated, nodding toward her phone. Put her on speaker. Asked her what you guys talked about over coffee today. Her face went pale, and there it was. Proof. A confession without words. She licked her lips. I can't believe this. Do it. She swallowed hard. No. I clenched my jaw. Why not? Because this is insane, she snapped. You're acting like some paranoid freak. You're standing here accusing me of cheating over a coffee receipt. Listen to yourself. I folded my arms. I'm listening to myself. Are you? She stared at me, breathing heavily. Then, suddenly, she changed tactics. Her eyes softened, filling with something almost like hurt. She took a slow step toward me, reaching out as if to touch my arm. Babe, she murmured. Come on. This isn't us. I didn't move. Her fingers barely grazed my sleeve before she sighed and dropped her hand. Look, she said, voice gentler now. I don't know what's gotten into you. Maybe work stress? Maybe you're just, I don't know, feeling insecure? A flicker of disgust curled in my stomach. She was trying to flip it, to make me the problem. I clenched my fists. You're lying, I said flatly. Her mouth opened, then closed. And then, for the first time, she actually looked guilty. Not just offensive, not just annoyed. Guilty. She turned away, rubbing her temples. I can't do this right now, she muttered, pacing a little. I watched her, studied her. There was no way she'd call Megan. No way she'd keep fighting this if I kept pressing. So I changed direction. I forced my voice to be calmer. Okay, I said. Forget the coffee. She looked at me warily. I shrugged. I believe you. Her shoulders sagged slightly, like she thought she had won. Thank you. I nodded. But I have one more question. She exhaled sharply. God, what now? I tilted my head. How long have you been screwing Ray? Her breath hitched. Her whole body locked up. And that was my real answer. Her face twisted. Are you serious? Again with this? I already told you. No, you didn't. I cut in. You never denied it. She opened her mouth, then shut it. A slow, simmering rage built in my chest. I bet it started months ago, I said, stepping closer. Maybe even longer. The way you've been acting, the way you suddenly cared about my haircuts, the way you always smelled like aftershave, even when I hadn't been home yet. She sucked in a sharp breath. That one hit. Her eyes darted away. I knew it. I felt it. And it was like a weight pressing down on my chest, crushing the last pieces of whatever trust one had left for her. I let out a humorless chuckle. You really thought I wouldn't figure it out? She turned back to me, eyes flashing with something between desperation and anger. Nothing happened, she said quickly. I swear. I barked a laugh. You're still lying to me? Her jaw tightened. Don't, I snapped. Don't even finish that sentence. Silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating silence. I could see it all so clearly now. The sneaking around, the hidden messages, the stolen moments, the smug look on Ray's face when he said those words to me. Everything made sense. And now, I had to decide what to do about it. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. Laura stood there, arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was holding herself together, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers twitched against her elbows. She was cornered, and she knew it. But still, she wouldn't confess. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady the boiling rage rising in my chest. My hands curled into fists at my sides, and I had to remind myself to breathe. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. Forget it. Her brows pulled together. Forget it. I nodded. Yeah. I turned away, shaking my head with a bitter chuckle. You're never going to admit it anyway. You'll lie until your dying breath, won't you? She sucked in a sharp breath. That's not fair. I whirled back to face her. Not fair? You want to talk about fair? My voice came out sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. What's not fair is me sitting in that damn barber's chair, while that smug son of a bitch looks me in the eye and tells me he knows how to please my wife. She flinched. Good. I stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. What's not fair is you coming home to me, kissing me, looking me in the face, knowing damn well you've been with another man. That's what's not fair. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. I let out a dry laugh and shook my head. You know what the worst part is? She swallowed hard. What? I clenched my jaw. You weren't even careful. You got sloppy. I lifted my hand, counting off on my fingers. The sudden interest in my haircuts. The way you started wearing perfume just to run errands. The late-night texts you swore were just from friends. I dropped my hand. And now this receipt. You can lie all you want, Laura, but I'm not a damn idiot. Her eyes flashed with something desperate. I was with Megan, she insisted. I bought the second coffee for later, that's all. I barked a humorless laugh. Oh, so now you're psychic? You knew in advance you'd want a cold coffee later. She pressed her lips together, looking frustrated, like she was mad at me for not buying into her story. I watched her closely. Every shift of her weight, every twitch of her fingers. She was unraveling. I don't know what you want me to say, she muttered finally, voice tight. I exhaled sharply, nodding to myself. All right. I turned away, running a hand through my hair. Then don't say anything. She hesitated. What does that mean? I didn't answer. I grabbed my phone off the counter and scrolled through my contacts until I found his number. Ray. I tapped the call button. Laura's eyes went wide. What are you doing? I held the phone up to my ear, staring at her the whole time. She went pale. It rang once, twice. Then, finally, he picked up. Yo, man. What's up? I smiled coldly. Hey, Ray. Funny thing. My wife swears you two have never been together. Thought you'd want to clear that up for me. Silence. Not a single sound from his end. My smile widened. Yeah, that's what I thought. Laura's breathing grew uneven. She took a step toward me, reaching out. Hang up. I stepped back. Why? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then, finally, Ray spoke, but not to deny it. Look, man. I hung up. That was all I needed. I turned back to Laura, who looked like she was about to be sick. Well, I said coolly. Anything else you want to lie about? Her shoulders dropped, and for the first time, her mask cracked. Her bottom lip trembled. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I tilted my head. Oh, you just tripped and fell onto my barber. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't like that. I laughed bitterly. Then how was it? She rubbed her arms, shaking her head. I don't know. You don't know. My voice sharpened. So what? You just blacked out and woke up at his bed. She wiped at her eyes. I was lonely, okay? My stomach twisted. Lonely? She nodded quickly, like she had found the excuse she was looking for. You were always busy with work. You'd come home exhausted. I felt, I don't know, neglected. I stared at her in disbelief. Neglected? Please, she whispered, stepping toward me again. I love you. I never stopped loving you. It was just... No. I cut in, shaking my head. You don't get to say that. She flinched. I took a slow step closer, my voice lowering. You don't get to love me when it's convenient. You don't get to love me while you're sleeping with another man. You don't get to love me after you let him sit in that chair and laugh in my face. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I made a mistake. I smiled coldly. No, Laura. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is losing your keys. I gestured between us. This was a choice. Over and over again. And the only mistake you made was getting caught. She covered her face, sobbing. Please. I turned away. Save it. I grabbed my jacket off the chair, stuffing my wallet and keys into my pocket. She spun around, eyes wide. Where are you going? I didn't look at her. Anywhere but here. I headed for the door, but her voice broke behind me. You're really going to throw everything away over one mistake? I stopped. Slowly, I turned my head, looking at her over my shoulder. I didn't throw anything away, I said quietly. You did. Then, without another word, I walked out the door. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp, but I barely felt it. My hands were tight around my keys, my knuckles white. My pulse was pounding, my mind racing, but I forced myself to keep moving, keep walking. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to get out of that house before I said or did something I couldn't take back. I got into my car, slammed the door shut, and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. My chest was tight, my jaw clenched so hard it ached. I could still hear her voice in my head, trembling, desperate. You're really going to throw everything away over one mistake? Like I was the one making the choice. Like I was the one who had done this. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing out a slow breath through my nose. The rage inside me was a living thing, clawing at my ribs, demanding an outlet. I needed to hit something, break something. Instead, I grabbed my phone. I scrolled down my contacts, back to the number I had called minutes ago. Ray. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the call button. He had been silent for too long when I called him earlier. That hesitation, that moment of dead air, had told me everything. He had been caught, and he knew it. I had half a mind to drive back to his shop, rip him out of that damn barber's chair, and beat the smugness right off his face. But I was an idiot. I wasn't about to get arrested over him. I needed to be smart about this. I exhaled slowly, then tapped his name again. The phone rang once, twice. Then he picked up. His voice was cautious now, hesitant. Hello. I didn't say anything at first. I let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of it. Then I spoke, my voice low. How long? A pause. Look, man. I cut him off. I'm not in the mood for games, Ray. You're going to tell me exactly how long you've been screwing my wife, and you're going to do it now. Another pause. Then a sigh. A few months. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. Months, I echoed. Yeah. He sounded reluctant, like he was doing me a favor just by answering. Like I should be grateful he was even acknowledging what he did. I swallowed down the bitter taste in my mouth. How did it start? He hesitated again. Then, finally, she came to the shop one day when you weren't with her. Said she was picking something up for you. We started talking. He stopped, then cleared his throat. She made the first move. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. And you just went along with it? Another sigh. I mean, just like that. No remorse. No apology. Just yeah. I opened my eyes, my vision sharp with fury. You knew she was married. A beat of silence. Then, yeah. You knew she was my wife. Another pause. A softer yeah. I clenched my jaw, so hard my teeth ached. I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle him. Instead, I forced my voice to stay level. You cocky son of a bitch. Ray exhaled. Look, man, I never meant. Don't. I cut him off sharply. I don't want to hear a single excuse come out of your mouth. More silence. Then a small chuckle. What do you want me to say, man? It happened. It's over now. My stomach churned. Over? It wasn't over. Not for me. Not by a long shot. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think, to plan. You think this is just done? Like you could just go on cutting hair, flirting with other men's wives, and it won't come back to bite you. Another chuckle. What? You gonna come down here and beat my ass? I smirked coldly. No, I'm gonna do something worse. He went quiet. I let that hang between us for a second, then hung up. I sat there in my car, breathing heavy, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I wasn't going to let this slide. Ray thought he could walk away from this untouched, that he could screw another man's wife and still go to work like nothing happened. That he could smirk at me, cut my damn hair, and not feel the weight of what he did. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I started the car, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I had an idea, and Ray wasn't going to see it coming. I sat there for a few more minutes, letting the engine idle as I stared out the windshield, my mind sharpening like a blade on a whetstone. Ray thought he had won. He thought this was just another story he could laugh about over drinks with his buddies. Another wife he'd betted, another husband left to lick his wounds in humiliation. But he had no idea who he was messing with. I wasn't the type to let things slide. I wasn't going to throw a punch, land a few hits, and call it a day. That would be too easy for him. No, I wanted something that would stick, something that would burn. I pulled my phone back out and scrolled through my contacts until I found what I was looking for, Mike Danner. Mike wasn't just a friend. He was my ace in the hole. The guy who knew everyone's business in this town. The kind of man who could make or break someone with a few well-placed words. He ran a construction company, but his real trade was information. If you wanted dirt on someone, you went to Mike. If you wanted someone ruined, you didn't hire a hitman. You hired him. I hit call. It rang twice before he picked up. Well, haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, I said. Been busy. That's so? What's up? I leaned back in my seat, staring out at the darkened street. I got a problem. He chuckled. I'm guessing this ain't the kind that needs a wrench. No, I said, my voice low. It's the kind that needs a wrecking ball. Silence. Then go on. I didn't bother with pleasantries. You know Ray's barbershop? Yeah, I know it. What about it? I smirked coldly. I want it gone. Mike let out a slow whistle. Damn. What the hell did Ray do to you? I exhaled through my nose. Let's just say he got real familiar with my wife. That kind of problem. Yeah. There was a pause, and I could picture Mike rubbing his chin, weighing his options. You want this clean, or you want it messy? I considered that for a second. Somewhere in between. He let out a dry laugh. All right, I can work with that. You want financial, legal, or social? All of the above. Oof, he said, amused. You really want this guy to drown? I don't just want him to drown, I said. I want him to watch the water rising and know there's no way out. Mike chuckled. I like it. All right, I'll get the ball rolling. But this kind of thing takes time. That's fine, I said. As long as when it happens, it hurts. Oh, it'll hurt, he assured me. Trust me. Ray's gonna wish he never unzipped his damn pants. I hung up, my heart still hammering in my chest. This was just the beginning. I had spent the last few hours reacting, but now I was taking control. Now it was my turn. By the time I got back to the house, it was nearly midnight. The place was dark, but I knew Laura was awake. I could feel it. Sure enough, when I stepped inside, she was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her eyes flicked up to mine as I entered, red-rimmed from crying, lips pressed together. I ignored her. I walked to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and twisted the cap off, letting it drop onto the counter. She swallowed hard. Where did you go? I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch. Her fingers curled against the edge of the table. I thought maybe you'd come back and we could... No. She flinched. I set the bottle down with a dull thud. We're not doing this. We're not talking. We're not fixing anything. She sucked in a sharp breath. Please don't. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You made your bed, Laura. Now lie in it. Tears spilled over, rolling down her cheeks. I don't want to lose you. I let out a bitter laugh. That's rich. You didn't seem too worried about losing me when you were lying under Ray, did you? She sobbed, covering her face. I watched her for a moment, then shook my head. I'll sleep on the couch, I said flatly. She lifted her head, eyes pleading. You don't have to. I'm not sleeping next to you. I grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and threw it over the couch. It wasn't comfortable, but it was better than the alternative. Laura lingered in the kitchen doorway for a few more seconds, then finally turned and went upstairs. I didn't follow. I didn't look back. I just lay down, staring up at the ceiling, my mind already planning the next move. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep. The couch was uncomfortable, sure, But that wasn't why. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running over everything that had happened, everything that was about to happen. Laura was upstairs, maybe in bed, maybe pacing, maybe lying awake like me, staring at the ceiling, knowing she had finally screwed up beyond repair. Or maybe not. Maybe she was already thinking of ways to twist this, to fix it, to manipulate me into forgiving her. But she was wasting her time. There was no fixing this. I sat up, rubbing a hand over my face. The house was quiet, too quiet, but my thoughts were loud. Ray. The name sent a pulse of rage through my veins, hot and sharp. He had been so sure I wouldn't find out. So cocky. So damn comfortable smirking at me in that chair, like I was just another idiot husband who didn't know what was happening under his own roof. He had no idea what was coming. I grabbed my phone and opened my messages. Mike Danner. Pulled some strings. Ray's lease on his shop is up in 2 months. Landlord's not renewing. Seems like some complaints came in. Also, a certain city inspector might be making a surprise visit soon. That place won't pass. He's about to have a lot of problems. I smirked. Good. That was just the start. I tapped out a response. Perfect. Let me know when it hits. I set the phone down and leaned back, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about control. Ray thought he was in charge, that he could screw my wife, joke about it, and move on without consequences. Laura thought she could lie, cover it up, and make me question myself instead of her. They both thought they had power over me. They were about to learn the truth. The next morning, I was up before Laura. I didn't tiptoe around the house. I wanted her to know I was awake. I wanted her to feel the weight of it. She came down the stairs slowly, hesitantly, like she was walking into a war zone. I was at the kitchen counter, drinking coffee, scrolling through my phone like it was just another morning. She lingered in the doorway. Did you sleep at all? I didn't look up. No. She swallowed. I cut her off. I don't care. She flinched. Good. She wrapped her arms around herself. Are we going to talk? I finally looked at her, and for the first time, I wasn't just seeing my wife. I was seeing a stranger. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the woman I married. She wasn't the woman who had laughed at my dumb jokes, who had held my hand in the car, who had whispered secrets to me in the dark. That woman was gone. I set my coffee down. Here's what's going to happen, I said, voice calm even. I'm filing for divorce. Her breath hitched. Wait. I don't care what you say. I don't care what excuse you come up with. I don't care how many tears you cry. We're done. She took a step forward, desperation in her eyes. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Fix it. I shook my head. You don't get to decide that. You made your choice. You made it every time you texted him, every time you saw him, every time you came home and looked me in the eye and lied. Tears welled up in her eyes. I love you. No, you don't. I exhaled slowly, standing up. If you loved me, we wouldn't be here. She was crying now, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I didn't feel guilt or confusion or self-doubt. I felt free. I walked past her, grabbing my keys. I'll be back later. Where are you going? She asked, voice shaking. I paused at the door, then turned my head slightly, to make sure Ray's day is as bad as mine. Then I walked out. I pulled into Ray's barbershop an hour later. He was outside, leaning against the doorway, coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other. He looked up as I got out of my car, and for the first time he didn't smirk. Good. I walked up slowly, letting him feel the weight of it. Morning, I said flatly. He eyed me warily. Look, man. I cut him off. Your lease is up soon. His brows furrowed. What? I pulled my phone out, scrolling through my messages, then held it up so he could see. He paled. You're done, I said. The city's coming down on you. Your shop's about to have all kinds of problems. Health code violations. Building code violations. Complaints from a neighborhood. His hand clenched around his coffee cup. You son of a... I smiled coldly. You did this to yourself. His jaw tightened. You think ruining my business makes us even? Oh, Ray. I chuckled. This isn't about getting even. This is just step one. He stiffened. What does that mean? I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. It means that every time you try to rebuild, I'll be there. Every time you think you're back on your feet, I'll knock you down again. He swallowed hard. Enjoy your last few months here. I said, stepping back. Make him count. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, staring after me. By the time I got back home, Laura was gone. Her purse, her car keys, a few of her things, missing. She had left a note on the counter. I didn't read it. I tore it in half, tossed it in the trash, and poured myself another cup of coffee. I had a long day ahead of me, and this was only the beginning.